we in the educational space, we spend so much time in this space that we can forget that for many families, if they themselves did not become educators, especially if this maybe is their first child, the last time they had an experience with an educational system was their own experience.
Oh gosh.
And some of
Yeah.
us don't even remember maybe the first day of kindergarten.
Hi, I'm Crystal Luce, professor of education.
And I'm Aimee Ketchum, pediatric occupational therapist.
Welcome to Plant the Seed of Learning, the podcast where we merge education and medical models to bring you science-based, practical insights on all things early childhood.
Whether you're a parent, teacher, therapist, or policymaker, we're here to help you support children from the start. So we are very excited for our guest today. Today we have Val Williams of Trying Together. And let me tell you a little bit about her. Originally from southwestern PA, Val has spent many years working in Pittsburgh, New York City, Cincinnati, Austin, Houston, and beyond. Has gotten all around the country. Val began her career as a performing artist and then moved into education and education policy and leadership. Having worked with children as young as infants up through adult learners, Val's unique background lends itself to systems level and continuum building work. Val previously served as a member of the Public Policy Advisory Committee for Everybody Texas and was a selected member of the inaugural cohort for educational leaders with Educators Neighborhood at the Fred Rogers Institute. She has founded and scaled nonprofit programs, run her own small business, created her own original music and edutainment for children, written a children's book, and regularly advocates for the importance of early childhood education at the local, state, and federal level. Most especially, Val is mama to an adorable and spunky 4-year-old daughter, a totally wacky one-eyed ginger cat named Tiger. We are so thrilled to have you. Hello, Val. Welcome.
Hello, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Welcome.
Yeah, so we have a lot to cover, just that bio alone. We could talk all day long. So let's jump right in. Val, can you tell us a little bit about your journey? You have a fascinating background in the arts, education, nonprofit leadership, and now education policy, including kindergarten transition leadership work, which is our love here on this podcast. So tell us, what led you to dedicate your career to helping children and families navigate this important milestone?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is a kind of culmination of so many things like you touched on. Having had the opportunity to work in so many different parts of education systems, birth to age 5, K through 12, even college and career pathways, I really realized how important those transition points are, of course. And I was really excited when I had the opportunity to come into this role to be that connector who could not only have the, we'll say, 5,000-foot view or the 500-foot view of like, okay, what does it really look to help our preschoolers prepare for kindergarten? What does that really look like, that bridge, that transition? And then also having worked across education systems, different ages, et cetera, and even more broadly, kind of human services adjacent work, it helped me to see in real time, in real life, the connections that we talk about from a policy and research perspective of knowing that these first 5 years are the foundation for our entire lives. This transition moment to kindergarten does set the tone so much for how we engage with education, even K through 12. And so I felt like, hey, this is a really cool opportunity for me to bring all of this experience and knowledge into this work. And then, I love being a connector. I love being a builder. I love opportunities to go, oh, hey, boop, that thing over here, boop, that connects to over here. Let me connect you. Let me do this. And build the thing that connects the things. So that's a really cool way I came to this work and what I try to focus on for sure.
Ugh, and you're so good at that.
That's
Thank you.
amazing. I can say in my previous role, I used to organize and run kindergarten registration days. And so I would do a lot of the testing and observing of the children, and it was really informative as I sat and watched. Some children came in and they were flourishing, and other kids were very nervous or just didn't want to display their skill sets that they had, or they were very antisocial. And it made me think so much about the years prior to kindergarten and how essential they are, and really how we have to work with families first and foremost, because sometimes families need more support than what they realize, or they're isolated and in a silo all to themselves. And I feel we do a disservice in K to 12 at times where we're not making those connections with families.
Yeah, I think that's something that's really exciting about the Hi5 model, which I know we'll talk about more in a little bit. But in one of our, we call it the 4 buckets of work. One of them is school to family. And so
Yeah.
really intentionally saying, okay, how are we directly connecting to families? When is that starting? Ideally, it doesn't necessarily just start the summer before, right? We're out in the community. We're a community collective presence where our K through 12 schools are in community and partnership with our community programs, our childcare programs, our families. They know where to find you so that it's not the first time we're thinking about kindergarten is like 3 months before we go. Uh,
Yeah.
and while you were talking, it also made me think about how we in the educational space we spend so much time in this space that we can forget that for many families, if they themselves did not become educators, especially if this maybe is their first child, the last time they had an experience with an educational system was their own experience.
Mhm.
Oh gosh.
And some of
Yeah.
us don't even remember maybe the first day of kindergarten.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, there is so much we maybe can take it for granted about or assume. There's so much we might assume
Hmm.
as adults
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
families are knowing or ready to do when in reality we're like, wait a second, let's roll back and realize what was their last school experience like and how
Oh,
can we
yeah.
work to close the gap. And sometimes for families where they maybe didn't have the best experience,
Yes.
that plays into it too. I always say
I
in
know.
our professional development sessions, community facing sessions, a parent and caregiver's view of education will shape their child's view of education
Yeah.
for the duration of their educational career. And
So
so if
true.
you as the parent caregiver did not have a positive affirming experience,
Yeah.
how can we reframe that? And how can we, that the school age side, community partners, childcare providers, you name it, everyone who's in the work, how can we help reframe for families so that this is an affirming and belonging experience, not just for that kiddo, but for the family as a whole? Because our kindergartners don't exist in a silo. They're not just like rolling up
Yeah.
themselves, right? They're part of a
No.
whole connected family system. So when we view it with that holistic lens, I
Hmm.
think we have the best success of really creating support and belonging.
So what
Absolutely.
would a successful kindergarten transition actually look like?
I would say number one thing when I was prepping for our conversation, the first thing that came to my mind was confident.
Mm,
Above all else, I want children and families to feel confident
hmm.
that they belong there, that they know what to do for that first day, know what they can do the summer before, the week before. And that if we're not feeling confident, we know we could go to find information and support.
That's, yeah. Sometimes families don't know how to seek out the information.
And often we maybe think, oh, well, the school will handle that. Well, that's school
Uh-huh.
stuff, right? I just need to do what they tell me and follow the things they
Yeah.
send me.
Yeah, for sure.
And so in the Hi5 model, we really think about that school to community connection, school to childcare provider and ECE professionals, school to family, and school to child, knowing that all of those connections really matter. So it doesn't feel like families are coming in from a vacuum trying to sift through it all themselves, but that they've really been able to feel embraced and know where to go with the questions.
Hmm.
And even sometimes you don't know what you don't know yet. So, like in my
Yeah.
role, I do family education support. This past year, I've been working with Carnegie Public Library so that, parents and caregivers who have direct questions have somewhere, have just another avenue where they can go with those questions. And I think beyond that, then the confidence, the feeling, I'm ready, I belong here, I
Yeah.
know what to do. There is an element also of that's really strong of social emotional readiness, even before academic readiness. Kindergarten teachers, and Crystal, you probably would agree with this, right? In your
Oh, oh
your
yeah,
kindergarten teachers have said to me, I know how to teach the ABCs and one, two, threes, that I'm trained to do it.
sure.
If our kindergarten friends are not ready to sit at the carpet, they're not ready to sit in their desk, they're not ready to stand in a line and have that self-regulation,
Yeah.
taking turns, knowing how to respond appropriately in conversation at an age expected level. Those kind of things can derail our other more academic learning. But
Hmm.
oftentimes we as parents, caregivers, like, oh gosh, they don't know all their letters and they don't have this thing ready and that thing ready. And
Yeah.
our teachers, our kindergarten teachers and administrators are going, we need our holistic social emotional readiness
Yes.
to be in the classroom environment to
Yeah.
come first.
Yeah. We talk so much about kindergarten readiness, and I think parents go right there, like letters, numbers, counting. And you're really talking about those skills that are a little bit more challenging sometimes to teach. And I've heard people say, soft skills, hard skills, we should flip those. The soft skills really are the hard skills, vice versa. So,
Mhm.
what would you say? Um, when someone hears the phrase kindergarten readiness, how do you define that? Like, what are the things that really matter there that you would want to tell our listeners?
I always say in my presentations, I say every child is born ready to learn.
Mm-hmm. That's so
Every child.
true. That is so true.
And it's important that I've had families say, are they not going to get into kindergarten if they don't know these things?
Oh,
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
say, no, no, no. Everyone is getting into kindergarten.
Right, right.
Especially even when we do a screening or evaluation. Sometimes folks,
Sure.
parents, caregivers can think that's like a test, right?
Yeah, they have to pass
uh-huh.
the
Um,
test.
yeah. Every child is born ready to learn. How are we, the collective we, creating an environment and a context within which every child can thrive?
Yeah.
And that environment and context begins in the first 5 years. Have
Mm-hmm.
children and families had access to high quality early childhood education, which can be a variety of different models,
Right.
childcare
Yeah.
program, learning with a family caregiver, attending play groups at the library, but have children and families had that access, to your point, to practice the skills
Yeah.
and acknowledging. I mean, we have in Hi5, like we have a skills list. It's available on the website. It's in 6 languages. And we also have a life skills list. And whenever I share out resources, I pair those together and say, all of these things are things that we are teaching. Instead of us thinking about, okay, we have to teach the academic stuff, knowing that everything is a skill. All of the first 5 years are skill building opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
including like my own child is 4 right now, right? We're working on not interrupting, understanding taking
Right.
turns.
Yeah, that's tough.
And
Yeah.
we're quite literally practicing it.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So while as a parent, sometimes when it's end of the day and I'm really tired and we've interrupted the story 15 times, my own exhaustion can come in and I
Mm-hmm.
could say, stop, stop interrupting. But I look at it as a moment to teach a skill.
Right.
So and this is because I did have the opportunity to teach in a childcare program, I might use during our own home story time, catch a bubble, which she will do. She'll
That's
catch a
great.
bubble means,
Oh, that's a
be
good one.
quiet for a minute,
Yeah.
hold that bubble in your mouth.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or can you put your finger, I know you're excited to read this story with me. I really like your ideas, but I'm feeling a little tired and frustrated that I couldn't get through this page. Could you put your finger and just being honest about my own limitations? Or I'm human, we're all human.
Yes.
Sure. Right.
Like, could you put your finger on your nose when you have something to say? And then when I'm ready, we can do a share. So
Mm.
that's me as a parent, caregiver of a 4-year-old connecting skill building that I know is going on at her school.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, I have, perhaps a more in-depth connection than the average, maybe non-education person. But if a parent caregiver is not working in education, are they connected to their teachers to where you can go to your childcare teacher or the leader of your play group and say, hey, my kiddo at home is struggling with this skill. What do you do when you're together? Are you noticing this?
Yeah.
What do you do? And can I connect across settings to build this skill?
Mhm.
And that kind of mindset for our family and caregivers helps us to build skills because parents are a child's first teacher.
Mhm.
Oh, I
And
know.
they don't think about it that way, but we are, right?
Oh, absolutely. And they're the most important teacher in a child's life. And when you say every child is ready to learn, I worry about the families that arrive at kindergarten registration and they're very nervous and they don't necessarily feel their child is ready to learn. And, we used to break the child away from the parent during the registration period, and the parents would go to a session so they could hear what they needed to about school and what the first day is going to be like, and also what the child is doing in the other room. But most importantly, it was how do we reassure those parents that everything is going to be fine and their child is ready to learn? And how do we empower parents? So, how do you reassure parents
Hmm.
when you think about that statement, every child is
Yeah.
ready to learn?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think first acknowledging that parents and caregivers are the expert on their child.
Yeah.
I'm coming to this, if I'm coming to you at the kindergarten transition point, maybe we're here to do registration day and screening, and I work, with the school district.
Hmm.
Perhaps revamping our mindset around, okay, here's the educational expert who's come to tell me all the things we need to do. And instead viewing it as, I'm over here, you've been over there. I'm so excited that we're coming together. What can you tell me about your child that can help me support them?
Mhm.
Yeah, I love that.
We
Sure.
have through Hi5 in the last couple of years, we revamped essentially like a universal screener that school districts, early childhood programs, even parents and caregivers can use. Uh,
Yep.
for that reason, it has extensive how-tos and modeling and a lot of things like that within,
Hmm.
so that, and it is also not only academic, it is holistic, right? Tell me
Yeah.
about what brings your child joy. Tell me about how your child learns best.
Mhm.
So there's that curiosity and making sure that we are building in space, and that can be difficult, into our screening and registration processes at first day, first
Mhm.
week, kindergarten transition, summer camp, whatever it may be, to be able to get curious and get to know children and their families in the way, Crystal, I liked what you said of, not separating, breaking apart, instead of saying, hey, we're all in this together. You
Yeah.
families are the expert on your child.
Right.
How can we come alongside each other to
Oh,
support? And I think that from the beginning will help to set a tone that parents and caregivers belong in the classroom. Because myself as a teacher, I know sometimes, often, I wished I had more information about children. I wished I heard more from parents and caregivers,
Mhm.
or that I
Interesting.
could reach them with
Yeah.
questions I had. And sometimes I myself felt siloed. So trying
Interesting.
to bridge those connections.
Yeah. Val, I love your point about children being born ready to learn. And I attest to that all the time. I've talked about it on the podcast before. As an occupational therapist working in a neonatal intensive care unit, I mean, I'm working with babies who have not even, should not even have been born yet. My little preterm babies that are only 2, 3 pounds, and I can see they're already showing curiosity, showing wonder, learning about their world. Just by the fact that when I approach the incubator and open the little window, they open their eyes and turn towards me and make eye contact, like they're curious and they're
mm,
interested. And it's so true that babies are born with that curiosity and wonder. And it's such, an interesting thing about how we sort of harness that and how we build in the self-regulation and all the other skills that we need for them to be successful when they get to school. And I think that's, you're really speaking our language, talking to parents about how we take that and harness it into ready learners. It's such an important piece. And I know,
Yeah, I love that.
yeah, so Pittsburgh does an amazing event every year called Kindergarten Here I Come. And I think it's coming up August 15th this year. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I would love to, but before we do, I wanted to double back to one really important thing you
Yes,
said to kind of
please.
rubber stamp it if I could, which is the Fred Rogers quote of when you wonder you're learning,
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
which is of course now a book, many resources from the Fred Rogers Institute. And I love that framing.
Uh-huh.
And that framing is what drove me even more to say, okay, I want to work more in an education policy space because
Okay.
I felt that in my diverse experience of what I had seen, I sometimes was seeing systems, education systems that were serving the system, if you will, instead of building systems to serve the children.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that sense of creating space for wonderment and curiosity and recognizing that, yes, it is there from the very earliest moments and being able to harness that
Mhm.
is really, really important. And that is a critical piece of learners feeling empowered and confident heading into kindergarten.
Yeah.
It can be challenging when we have 25, 28, 21 children in a room,
Mhm.
especially if some friends are super wiggly, and they're going, oh,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
need to control this classroom. And readiness is about control.
No.
It is about creating environments and spaces where children can thrive. And so that's even speaks to behaviors. We always say this. I know conscious discipline says this, and we say it trying together. Every behavior is a communication.
Yep.
And so that framing as well, I think, is important as parents and caregivers look to prepare for kindergarten instead of going, oh, I have to control these behaviors,
Right.
getting curious around what a behavior is communicating and then going, okay, how can I design more support
Mhm.
to help this behavior nudge in the direction that we want?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm glad you brought up the when you wonder you're learning because we did have Ryan Radusky as one of our guests a few months ago. So we are
So fun.
huge, huge fans of both Ryan and the book. And yeah, it's Greg, his co-author. So yeah,
And Mr. Rogers.
oh, of
That
course.
is a quote we always use when you
Well,
wonder
so
you are learning.
Yeah.
small world things. My mom went to high school with neighbor Aber, and one
No
day we ran into
way.
him. And one day we ran into him at a store, and I was like 20. And she said, do you know who this is? And I was like, no, because I didn't put it together out of context. And I said, was it Harold, my babysitter? When I was she felt so embarrassed. She said, no, it's neighbor Aber.
Oh my
I just
gosh.
love
Oh, that's
what a,
great.
yeah, I love what a
Those are the
small.
perks of living in Pittsburgh.
Yes, yes. Well, I love that about Pittsburgh. It is
I
a
know.
proper big city, but with that small town feel. And so, I mean, that's a
Yeah.
perfect segue to the Children's Museum event, which is so wonderful.
Yeah.
So it's going to be August 15th this year. It's Kindergarten Here I Come. Children's Museum hosts this event annually. Hi5, we always join for tabling and resources and just to be there as a partner. It's obviously a day to enjoy all the wonderful things that the Children's Museum has all the time.
Hmm.
And then they also add kindergarten transition and readiness information. Allegheny County Library Association is often there. Reading is fundamental, maybe free books, free swag, information, opportunity to ask questions. I'll be there, for any in-depth questions. I love a complex question actually because it lets me get my systems connector hat on. And they even usually have a school bus where children can take a ride on the school bus and
Oh,
practice
great.
that, which is like a
Oh,
favorite transition
That's a
thing.
big deal.
So I highly
it
encourage
is.
folks to come out if they can.
Oh,
You are so
wonderful.
right about Pittsburgh feeling like a small town because my experience in Pittsburgh, I love Pittsburgh and I love visiting. It just reminds me of my days at University of Pittsburgh, and I just feel like Pittsburgh does such a great job, and there's so many community resources at everyone's disposal, and it doesn't feel too big to enter. It's just all hands on deck. And I know you just mentioned all the community people that are at the event, libraries, pediatricians, childcare programs. How do you make that happen?
Well, I can't take credit for that event of booking all those amazing people. That is totally the Children's Museum. But
Oh,
Okay.
as far as the broader connections, yeah, I mean, that really goes back to so in 2010, when the Hi5 network in Southwestern PA first came together, there was an initial survey of some school districts, not all, because we actually have 43 school districts in Allegheny County. And
Wow.
we now work regionally with United Way of Southwest PA in the surrounding counties. But when they first came together, there was a moment of going, hey, I think we have a challenge here with children not arriving to kindergarten on time. For a long time, the mandatory school age in Pennsylvania was actually 8, which would, of course, be like second
Mhm.
grade.
Mhm.
And there's a rural agrarian tie to that, right? A lot of farmland and different sort of structures and times around school. Now the mandatory school age is 6, which could technically be first grade. We mostly see children attending kindergarten, whether it's half day or full day. But what we were noticing 15-ish years ago was these school districts that were surveyed, hey, there's a gap in on-time attendance. We've got 13% of children arriving on time for the first day at these surveyed school districts. What can we do about this? So that's how Hi5 came together as a partnership uh,
Mm.
of school districts voluntarily participating, and now all 43 in Allegheny County do join, as well as regional districts. And we look at, okay, what are we doing? School to family direct connections, school to community connections, school to childcare partners, and those 4 buckets of work. And so community partners like pediatricians or our libraries come into the work in that way. And because, not every child is having the same birth to age 5 educational experience, and parents have a variety of choices on what they want that to look like for their child. The most important thing is that along the way, children and families are getting what they need. So that may be our libraries, able to join in and share the message of kindergarten readiness and transition and provide those resources. United Way does like a big book drop where they're providing literacy resources for early childhood. Pediatricians not only have the kind of medical wellness piece to it, but early intervention is extremely critical. And I know, Aimee, you know this, of course, as well. And so being that support of saying, hey, I'm noticing this is going on with your child. Are you noticing that? Did you know that early intervention in Pennsylvania is available and free? And
Right.
your child can get support in these ways. And also helping to dispel the myths around any negativity of special education support, be it birth to age 5 or kindergarten to 12. So Trying Together last year released an early intervention toolkit that is available online. It is Allegheny County focused, but the structure mirrors how the state functions in that
Uh-huh.
regard. So
Mhm.
that's another resource that community partners, childcare providers, families,
Love it.
caregivers
Yeah.
can push in
Mhm.
and say, yes, I'm not an EI expert,
Mhm.
Right.
but I am the one who's here noticing this friend
Uh-huh.
needing some. I'm the children's librarian, and I notice that every week this kiddo comes and what could we
Right.
do?
I love that every type of community agency that you just mentioned, they're in the community, but they're not always available to go into school districts during kindergarten registration. So having them at one big event is really, really crucial. And it just hit me as you were discussing this. I mean, we never thought to bring in all these agencies at our kindergarten registration events because you're just trying to get the families there. So having
Mhm.
some type of large scale event where everyone, all hands are on deck, especially pediatricians and early intervention to help answer those anxiety type questions. So important. I love
Yeah,
it.
and it's really about systems connections.
Yeah.
And we see this in Allegheny County. We have a lot of, and the structure is different, whether you're urban, rural, suburban. Obviously, counties have differences in how they function. In Allegheny County, there are many, many resources, but are we always able to work together? Are we talking to each other in the best way we can? Can we create a stronger, even data sharing agreement where we're able to send this information over
Yeah.
sooner so that our school district knows what's going on and vice versa?
That is so
Excellent.
important for so many reasons. I mean, children from birth to 5 get handed off often from agency to agency. And sometimes when we don't have that warm handoff from NICU to EI or EI to IU, children get lost in the cracks, or even vital pieces of information get lost that really affect the outcome of that child. So, yeah, that is also important. And also, I find just here in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, a lot of young families are very transient. They're moving from one school district to another, maybe before children start school. So to have some sort of cohesion, between all of the local school districts is really, really important too. And I love that that event brings that all together. It's something
Mhm.
that Pittsburgh is doing right. And I wish more cities and towns could emulate that. I know Crystal and I would love to do it here in Lancaster. We've talked about how we could potentially make it happen. So we'll
Yeah.
probably be in touch, Val, to get more get more
Yeah,
information.
we have a lot of really, really strong county level connections that I think are very cool in
Mhm.
Allegheny County.
It's
Excellent.
really important. So, so, so.
Another thing you'd asked me about, community partners and what they can do. And I wanted to make sure we didn't leave out local businesses,
Yeah.
right? And how businesses, corporations can support
Hmm.
education and early childhood work and kindergarten transition even. EITC scholarships are something that businesses can do, earned income tax credit, right? And so that structure allows for tax credits and tax breaks for companies and corporations that are
Hmm.
contributing to early childhood education. There are many different structures. And then companies can have their own individual support, right? Whether it's attending events, being a resource partner, or providing your employees flexibility when they need it with their youngest children. Some companies have their own childcare programs, some offer childcare stipends. Because those earliest years, again, going back to the first 5 years, laying a foundation for a life.
Hmm.
The research
Yeah.
shows us this, and retention in staffing shows us this.
Hmm.
So if you run a business, large or small, and you want your staff to be able to come to work and come back to work, or be able to come back after maternity, paternity leave, etc., it is quite literally financially in your best interest to have these kind of supportive birth to age 5 policies. And then from an economic and societal externality point,
Yeah,
we know that the research shows long term
of course.
the support on a thriving society
Hmm.
around supporting these first 5 years.
Yep.
So I think that's a way that our business partners can also come alongside the early childhood conversation, support their employees, support the community,
Yeah.
and ultimately, that even supports, of course, thriving wage, thriving economy, and it's going back into the community. So I
That
think there's a
return on investment is huge.
yeah,
And there's some
yeah.
data, it's up to $17 per $1 return on investment into of a child under the age of 5, which is huge.
It
Yeah.
is.
We've made, I think many a business could argue that they've made a much riskier investment with a much lower ROI than that. So let's do
Absolutely.
that. It's
That's a
literally
good
flip
point.
iron.
That is a really good point. So, the Hi5 Kindergarten Transition model that Trying Together leads has gained national attention for connecting families, early childhood programs, schools, and communities. So, what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned about those partnerships that you would share?
I think we touched on some of them
Yeah,
for sure. The importance of thinking of it from a grassroots to a grass tops level and everything in between.
yeah, okay.
So it has to go beyond just our school district being expected to reach out to every child and every family under age 5, get them in the door, and then close any gaps that may exist before third grade. We
Mhm.
talk a lot in Pennsylvania about, and nationally, about on-track reading levels by third grade
Yeah.
as predictors for lifelong outcomes.
Mhm.
And because, to your point, Amy, you mentioned kind of systems being siloed and having sometimes a rough handoff or a clunkier handoff than we might like.
Mhm.
For us to expect our school K to 12 school districts to be able to close those gaps for all children by third grade, when not every child has had the same opportunities birth to age 5, is quite, if I may, quite literally kind of statistically silly. There's five whole
Absolutely.
years that we really need to be collectively dialed into
Yeah.
from an investment point, a community standpoint, you name it. And so there's that power of community and wrapping around families, helping families and caregivers have what they need. Our childcare programs being well supported, resourced, and funded,
Mhm.
Yeah.
affordable childcare being available, our grass tops business leaders and our legislators coming alongside and making sure that there is that public investment and support. So it's
Mhm.
not just on families or just on K to 12. That's how we really support holistic K readiness, is looking at it through a holistic lens.
That's great. And speaking of grassroots, you have a YouTube channel that you started during COVID that
I
was
did.
used to support parents. Can you
Yes,
tell
yes,
us
yes.
a little bit about
Yes.
that?
So I know when we ran down my bio and we mentioned, my previous my undergraduate degree was in musical theater. I went to a conservatory of music, and then along the way was finding once I got to New York City and I was performing, but there's always a lot of time between jobs. What am I doing? Am I waiting tables? Am I temping? You're trying to find your way.
Sure.
And I remembered that in college, I had really liked teaching because I taught with what was called at the time a mobile dance program called Webby Dance Company. They were
Oh,
just a little local program then. I think now they're national actually. And we went into childcare programs. And
Oh,
back then
wow.
I brought my boom box and my CDs and my tumble mat
yeah.
and taught dance and creative movement in the childcare programs to children as young as 2. So then I was in New York and I was like, I really liked that. So let me do that. So I started teaching more and more, found my way more formally into education, right? And had created, I've always been a creator. When I was a kid, I was writing stories and dancing in the basement and doing songs and stuff. And so it was a natural progression to meld my love of education and performing arts. And when I was in New York, I also taught quite a bit of grown up in me classes where the grown up would be with the kiddo, maybe as young as 4 months. And
Mhm.
grown ups would be like, I don't know, should we enroll in this class? Like, what are they even doing? I
Yeah.
remember hearing that. I'd be like, well, just come and you'll see
Yeah.
how much you can do with your little baby, like Aimee said before.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
But I also noticed that while I was teaching those classes, the grown-up education piece of how to teach your child, how to talk to your child, how to create a concept for your child was really necessary because we don't remember being 2 as adults, so sometimes we don't know how to talk to a 2-year-old.
Right.
And we feel really silly boogieing down to the Trolls soundtrack because we have all this adult stuff put on us that we're not supposed to act like that or someone's going to judge me. And so when I created this concept, it was called Songs for Young Whippersnappers, which there's a CD and
So
all this
cute.
stuff online. The concept was about linking generations. So I used kind of older music, Burt Bacharach or You Are My Sunshine, more classic songs
Sure.
that even my grandparents, who at this point were born in the 1920s, used to sing to me because I wanted to connect generations through song and music in a
Great.
not just entertainment way, but like an educational way too.
Mm.
So when I would
Smart.
so for a while we did live shows all around, we did all different stuff. And I felt it was critical to model for the other grown-ups and adults
Mm-hmm.
how to engage with our youngest children.
Smart.
Yeah.
And so then when COVID hit, um, I immediately went, well, first of all, everything I'm doing has kind of been gone off the rails. I might lose my mind if I'm trapped at home for the foreseeable. How can I be purposeful?
Mhm.
How can I be of service with the skills I have? And I knew K through 12 education would have to do something because it's federally mandated.
Right.
But what about our birth to age 5 friends? And what about my adults I know who are parents of 2-year-olds who are now supposed to work from home
Mhm.
and they might just lose their minds. I mean, all this is really in my mind.
Of
So
course.
I had this business and all this stuff. And so I took to the airwaves of the live stream really from the first week. And I started doing a 45-minute preschool class every day for free, join online, stream live.
Mhm.
And I did, in total, I want to say 45 episodes,
Wow.
Great.
45 hours of content. And it was really modeled just like a preschool classroom, mixed age 3 to 6 was the target.
Uh-huh.
And I had families, some of whom I knew and many of whom I'd never met, message me and say, thank you so like this gives me
Mhm.
1 hour a day
Yeah.
to know
Yeah.
my kid is not just watching whatever, but really.
Quality, some quality
Yeah.
content that you
Yeah,
provided.
great.
And
That's
for some
amazing.
kiddos, like my one friend, I was her first teacher. They sent me a thank
Oh my
you
gosh.
in
Oh,
the mail.
that's special.
It's my first educational experience during
Wow.
COVID.
Well,
Wow.
and you think about music. Music as a whole with young children is so important because it's developing their phonemic awareness,
Yes.
rhyme, repetition. We have an
Yes.
agency that's local called Popopsky, and they do a music together programs, kind of similar to what you're talking about, except the preschool part. But they travel around and they lead music classes for parents and their babies on up, and it's fantastic.
I've always thought, so my mother was a music teacher, right? So it was
Okay.
in the blood. But I think of music and movement as a primary educational tool, not an add-on.
Yeah, I
It doesn't
agree.
mean you have to be a singer. It doesn't mean you have to
No.
be a dancer, right? A
Right.
critical piece of it, which was what I was doing with Songs for Young Whippersnappers, is demystifying it. It's not about being
Yeah.
perfect, or because
No.
when we model for our youngest learners that we are courageous to do something out of our comfort zone and get silly and get curious and even mess
Right.
up,
Yes.
it shows them that it's okay to mess up. How is a child, if a child does want to learn to sing one day, how are they going to learn to sing if they can't ever be bad at it for a while?
Right.
And you don't have to be a beautiful singer to sing with children. I did it all
Right.
the time as a
It's about
kindergarten
that
teacher. Yeah.
connectedness,
Yes.
Yeah.
connection. I think music
Yeah.
is so powerful for transitions where we
It
often
is.
tend to find that we maybe fall apart in the early childhood classroom. The content's
Absolutely.
really strong, but those transitions, and it's taken me 10 minutes every time to get them back.
Yeah.
I used to call it Pied Pipering. I was singing from uh, our center time is closing. Now it's time to transition to lunch. I'm singing, I'm clapping,
So
we're doing
valuable.
whatever.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Oh, that's so much great information, Valerie. We really, really appreciate it. We like to end our podcasts with what is one tip that you could give our listeners that they could try today or try tomorrow that would help their children either with kindergarten readiness, early learning, any tip that you have for our listeners?
About kindergarten transition, I think I'll tie it back to that and say,
Yeah.
get excited.
Mm.
Let's be excited, right? Going back to that modeling and setting the tone. You can be excited and scared at the same time. One of my favorite musicals is called Into the Woods, and there's a spot where it's not a children's musical, but there's a spot where Little Red Riding Hood says, and I'm feeling scared, well, excited and scared, and that you can feel them both together, right? And so even if you are a little scared or trepidatious, remember to bring that excitement and joy into it because it can be you're setting the tone for a beautiful time in your child's life.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it will do us all of us who are in the work and you as parents and caregivers, a great service to have a child who's excited to get up and go to school in the morning. And a child who, maybe even with you, can understand that excited and scared or nervous can coexist
Yeah.
and that we can persevere through this together. What does it look like when my grown up is scared? They are nervous and they
Mhm.
do it anyway. And
Mhm.
I can do that too. I got this.
That
That's
is
setting a
such,
great example and
yeah.
building a child's confidence because when they
Yeah.
see that and can name that emotion, that's very helpful.
Great advice.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Plant the Seed of Learning. We want to thank our guests, past and present, for sharing their knowledge and their work. A special thank you to our producer, Penn Ketchum. You can find our podcast wherever you listen on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. We can't wait to learn from you and plant more seeds together.
Thank you.